I told you guys the wait would be worth it. The intro speaks for itself. Today, guys, we've got a Pokemon Omega Ruby Alpha Sapphire series versus the one and amazing Roku. He wanted to feature his special team, and I have been promising this man forever it was going to happen, and I just had to get everything perfect before we get it started. So I've got 5 games in a row today. I'm sorry, 4, excuse me. 2 doubles and 2 VGC, and we're going to kick it off with VGC because we actually redid the whole beginning and started off with VGC, and the fitting thing couldn't be better. We're going to jam it, we're going to be on space, and we're going to lead off with a Shiny Landorus and a Cresselia versus his Amoonguss and Salamence. We're going to trade some Intimidates, and he is going to Mega Evolve into a big croissant with wings. I'm going to protect on the first turn because I don't know what he's going to do. He goes for a Hyper Voice, and Cresselia takes that fantastically, allowing the time to get a Thunder Wave on this red drum. But I do protect, so I do not get hit by that Spore, and he is going to switch this Mushroom out because it is definitely not the thing to go into. Now he's got this Tyranitar, and let me tell you about this Tyranitar. He perfectly switches in, predicting me to go for a Psyshock with the Cresselia. The Cresselia is Ice Beam, Psyshock, Thunder Wave, I do believe. I'm going to swap out into Rotom. Rotom is the best in attack. This dude comes with a frozen cold Ice Punch. And I tell you, man, this Choice Scarf Tyranitar is absolutely no joke. But you know, Rotom is hanging in here tough. He is washing, he is drying, he is in here tough. He takes that really, really well as he swaps out his Red Drum into Excadrill. Really good swap as I go for a Will-O-Wisp predicting on the Tyranitar slot and go for a Hyper Voice. I would just like to say I do not play doubles. Pixelate Choice Specs boosted Hyper Voice does do a pretty significant chunk. I'm not into taking any Iron Heads. Cresselia is the call as he goes for a Rage Powder to focus his attention on the Mushroom, on the Fungus Amoonguss, the Imposter. He does take the Hydro Pump really, really well, gets the Berry Recovery. Cresselia does hold on pretty okay at 52 after all of the residual damage on the field. Another Rage Powder going to come down as an Iron Head finally takes out my Cresselia. And I decide to go ahead and Will-O-Wisp, predicting the double swap into Tyranitar again. Now I'm coming into the Sylveon. I do not have Protect on this Sylveon. He goes for a Protect of his own. I'm assuming worried about a Hydro Pump from the Excadrill. But that boosted Hyper Voice is enough to bring us back out into Rockzilla, and Rockzilla is back here. Iron Head is going to wipe my Sylveon off the map with a critical hit. As a Rock Slide hits the Rotom, we get our Berry, get a nice recovery boost. Hydro Pump taking out the Excadrill, and it is mono via mono, me and Tyranitar. Oh yeah, and this guy's here too. He is paralyzed though, but even without that Berry recovery, it is too late, too long with that Will-O-Wisp, and unfortunately he just finished me off with that Dragon Pulse, and does not get paralyzed. That was a 2 versus 1. Let's go ahead and jump into the next game and continue to party. Thank you so much, and let's jump into game 2, which is going to be a full-on 6v6 doubles. Spoiler alert, I don't play doubles, but let's go ahead and jump into it and see how it went down. We are kicking it retro with Back to Mario Party 64, the very first one. Luigi's engine room sped up. Let's go ahead and jump into it. We both double out. He goes into Thundurus. I go out into Landorus. And there's going to be some Intimidate shenanigans. I am fine with Excadrill getting intimidated. I've got to be very, very careful because I don't just want to freely swap in something in case this Thundurus has Hidden Power Ice. Landorus does take Iron Head pretty damagingly, even though there is that Intimidate. Now, let me tell you something. I'm so used to Live Orb Excadrill from back in the time that I can't even see straight. Also, Specially Defensive Thundurus is incredible, but that's not what this is because this takes over half from an Ice Beam, so that is fantastic. He goes out into Red Drum, he gets his own Intimidate on my Landorus, and I swap back and I go out into Bisharp. I was predicting him to go into Intimidate, but I was 1 turn too late. But I do take that Hidden Power Ice Well on the prediction. I actually predict him to double swap out into Thundurus, predicting to preserve it because it is a very, very fast sweeper and a good Mon overall. So I make another double out into Rotom this time just to see what he wants to do. He decides to go for a Thunder Wave of his own, predicting that Sandstorm does bring his Thundurus down to a nice range, and Cresselia gets leftovers. I'm not too worried about any of this. He swaps out Red Drum into Amoonguss. Remember, this is full 6v6 doubles, and Thunderbolt does a pretty sizable amount to Cresselia, but it does die to either the Life Orb or the Sandstorm damage, so that's fantastic. Now, the Sandstorm is going to subside as he goes back out into his Tyranitar. I'm predicting him that he's going to want to go for some Dark Attack, so I decided to go out into Bisharp predicting that, and see what he wants to go for instead. He goes for the Ice Punch, and he does not get the freeze. I'm going to go ahead and burn the Annoying Mushroom, get hit by some Sandstorm and some residual damage as he decided to Rage Power, make everybody aware in the room that he's the imposter, so we don't even have to guess anymore. As I swap out into Landorus again to get another Intimidate off as he goes for another Rage Powder, and he predicts... I thought he was going to predict the Ice Punch slot, but he doesn't. Ironhead does not do enough to this Amoonguss. He's got a really, really nice spread to be defensive, and I just go ahead and go for a Protect to see what this guy wants to do. He goes for a Rage Powder of his own here. This time he does target into the Landorus and knock out my Landorus with that Ice Punch, but I get to get the Annoying Mushroom down. So, like I said, imposters out of the way, everybody is safe on the ship. Anyways, I do love Amoonguss. So, he swaps into Silence. I get a free Defiant boost off of the Intimidate as he swaps into a Zoom Arrow, as he once again goes into his Mega Croissant Witch. And Mega Croissant Witch is going to get hit by a boosted Sucker Punch. Remember, we do have the Sand Stream going as well with that residual damage as I Volt Switch on a Zoom Arrow, and that also does a really nice chunk of damage as I go out into my Sylveon here. Now, if I'm not mistaken, Excadrill is worn down pretty well, or it's actually in the back so that he can utilize that later on with the sand. So, I'm going to go ahead and take this Aqua Jet, and Hyper Voice actually crits my Beedrill. That is very, very unfortunate, and it knocks out my Sylveon as well. So now I'm going to go ahead and go for Helping Hand on with the Rotom as he Dragon Pulses and does a pretty sizable chunk. I thought he would just knock out Cresselia there, but I get a useless crit on Azu, but since I had Helping Hand and Stab Boost, it did not matter. And now we're at pretty much the same situation that we were before, where Cresselia is hanging on for dear life. Tyranitar hits with a Rock Slide. Rotom does dodge it, though, because we wash him, we dry him, we chillin'. We'll go ahead and go for the Will-O-Wisp, but we got our Berry already. Salamence does go down to the Sandstream boost, but then we have Excadrill in the back. And I'm pretty sure you guys know that Excadrill and Tyranitar is a combination that Rotom, as wonderful as a Pokemon it is, cannot handle. I'm actually considering making this a bit more defensive invested. Maybe it could rest off these Rock Slides. Was hoping to get some Thunder Waves later on, but that's Game 2. Let's go ahead and jump into Game 3. Alrighty, let's jump into Game 3 versus Roku. He's leading off with Red Drum and Spore this time. I've got Cresselia and Sylveon. I really want a situation where, like, a Helping Hand into boosted Pixelate Hyper Voice. And that's exactly what I'm looking to do, except I go for a Psyshock, predicting this thing, and this thing must live on what must be abysmal HP. And this time he gets my Cresselia to sleep, and that is very unfortunate as he brings back Drill for Thundurus, which is strange. But he predicts that really well as I go into Landorus, and let me tell you, I just don't know the setup here. I go into Bisharp, hoping that he'll actually go Hidden Power Ice into the other slot over Predict. But as I get the Defiant Boost on the Salamence and he goes back into his big bread thing, he just knocks me out with a Hidden Power Ice into the Landorus slot. So that happened. I guess that's what I get for this Dusky Forest music, right? I do not take a Flamethrower well at all. I do take it enough to, I do to the Sucker Punch, to the recoil. Here comes my Beedrill, and my Beedrill outspeeds Salamence. It does not outspeed this Excadrill, or it would, as long as the sand is not up. So I'm going to go ahead and protect my Beedrill as he goes for a Thunder Wave on the Beedrill. The Hyper Voice is able to knock out the Thundurus, which tells me it's offensive Thundurus, which I found out in the first orange was really cool. As I go into Crest here, and I U-turn on the Annoying Mushroom just to get that damage off as I go back out to Rotom, predicting him to hit me in the Beedrill slot with an Iron Head or put me to sleep. Either one. I'm fine with Rotom being asleep because it pretty much walls Excadrill for the most part as he goes out into T-Tar here, and he is wasting no time at all, just getting that damage up and up and up on my sleeping Mons. Unfortunately, my whole team is asleep. I can't do much about that. Cress is hanging in tough. I'm interested to see what that Tyranitar is actually up to. And he predicts me to swap into Sylveon on that slot and knocks me out with an Iron Head. And does quite a bit of damage with Crunch as I wake up and fire off and knock this Excadrill out. And that is really, really nice. And I get my berry, so now I'm sitting kind of pretty as he goes back out into Red Drum. Beedrill does outspeed Red Drum. I'm hoping I can take him out with a U-turn. I protect the Beedrill slot again. Not sure what he wants to go for on the Beedrill slot, but I'm not trying to find out. He protects the Annoying Mushroom as the Will-O-Wisp is pretty much negated. And Beedrill's pretty much the fastest thing out here. So even with a Rage Powder, I could just U-turn again, get free damage, and get this Mushroom to a point where I can knock it out and go into Cresselia. At this point, Hyper Voice does bring Cresselia down to a range I can't really do much. But that's okay, because I am thinking that now all this residual damage has been dealt. I will be able to knock out the Annoying Mushroom and take him out as he goes for a Rage Powder. And I can easily just knock him out with a Volt Switch from this range as Crest goes down and Volt Switch goes off, and we take this thing out, which is nice. So now we've still got the Salamence to deal with as I go into Beedrill once again. He doesn't have Thundurus to Thunder Wave me as it goes on to Azumarill. I've got to be careful here because Azumarill with Aqua Jet and stuff like that, Rotom does go down here, and that is unfortunate. There is an Azumarill and there is a Salamence. Luckily, I knocked that thing out with a Poison Jab and a Play Rough. He does not even need a crit. He probably is Choice Banded. He does a significant amount of damage. Let's go ahead and jump into game 4, another doubles game. He leads off with the dynamic duo of Excadrill and Tyranitar. I am not taking a Iron Head. I'm going out into Landorus. I do not have to worry about anything other than if he predicts Ice Punch on that slot. He does not. He predicts Crunch, or he goes for Crunch. So he goes for the neutral play as I paralyze Tyranitar. Take a little bit of residual damage, but Cresselia doesn't mind because it just gets it off with leftovers as he trades out Excadrill because he needs it later on for the Sandstream. I go into Rotom as he swaps out Tyranitar into Salamence. It's a revolving door of Pokemon! Alright, so he goes out into Salamence, and Thundurus does not care too much about anything as he is immune to it. He's going to Mega Evolve, and this thing is pretty damaging from this range with Hyper Voice, and I know he could take me out with either that or Hyper Voice. He double targets. Rotom doesn't take anything at all from Hyper Voice because I'm specially defensive as I get off a free Volt Switch, get some damage, go into Beedrill, and here's the thing. I have to pretty much protect Beedrill because I want him to trigger off the Thunder Wave and let my Bisharp come in for free here. As long as Beedrill is bait for Thundurus, it will Thunder Wave because it wants to nullify any issues or anything that this thing can do. But he predicts instead to hit the Landorus spot with the Hidden Power Ice, and that gave me a free chance to get in Bisharp for free damage on one of the Mons. That plan didn't work out, so I go back into Landorus to get an Intimidate off of my own, which really doesn't matter. As I go for a Sucker Punch, and Sucker Punch combined with the Sandstream damage is enough to take out the Mega Salamence at the cost of my Bisharp, but the Sandstream subsides. So, I guess that is very unfortunate. I do protect in that slot. Landorus does take enough. Luckily, Ice Beam is almost enough to knock out the Thundurus from this range. But Landorus is still holding in there with Intimidation and stuff like that. Rotom is a really good swap here. Not taking anything at all from the Hyper Voice with the spread damage and the Hidden Power Ice. Hits the Rotom instead of the Landorus, and then Thundurus dies to the Light Orb. And then I get my berries. So that works out well, and I get to paralyze the Mega Salamence. So this is working out fanatically. The Annoying Mushroom comes back in as he goes out into, as I go out to Sylveon. See, the Tyranitar will just knock this thing out anyway with its own sand. He Giga Drains that slot on the Sylveon as I hit the Annoying Mushroom with a Psyshock. And the Hyper Voice does quite a bit of damage. I go for Helping Hand. And even if we knock out Crest here, that's fine. I want to get this Mushroom out of the way. He has definitely been in the meeting and been the imposter every other game. We're going to go ahead and knock him out. As Azumarill comes in, I see an Aqua Jet from a mile away. I go into Rotom on that slot to take that Aqua Jet. As I go for a Spec Psyshock, which doesn't do hardly anything to Sylveon as I go down to the Aqua Jet. But keep in mind, I am pretty much guaranteeing that Tyranitar will knock out Mega Salamence with its own Sandstream as I Volt Switch safely back into Beedrill now that Thundurus isn't around to Thunder Wave me. Aqua Jet is taken very, very nicely by the Rotom as I Volt Switch safely to knock out Azumarill. And now trade this back out for Cresselia once again. With Redrum being paralyzed, I can easily just knock it out with an Ice Beam from this range. As he now goes into Tyranitar, which is also paralyzed. So if he's Choice Scarf, I'm not worried. I go for a Helping Hand, adaptability boosted U-turn, and knock that thing completely out and don't have to worry about it anymore at all. Go back out on the Landorus again. And Crest can just finish off this thing, but I don't have to because the sand does that for me. And now we've got the circumstance that I wanted, which is now Excadrill. But you know what? Excadrill has been known to bring things back. I don't know why he goes for an Earthquake there. That was free damage on Excadrill. I'm assuming he just wanted to get out whatever Pokemon that was there. I decided to go back out into my Landorus, which he had no reason to Earthquake. That's a free Intimidate. as I go for a Helping Hand to help Landorus. The Rock Slide, though, does indeed knock out Cresselia with the Sandstorm help. And then, of course, here comes another set of Rock Slides, which brings Rotom down. And it also flinches Landorus. My God, Sand Rush Excadrill making a comeback. It is time for a turnabout for him. But I do have an ace in the hole because the Sandstorm subsides as I stall the last turn, and the Drill Run is enough to take him down. Alright, guys, I got one more game, and it's VGC. Let's jump into it. Alright, he's leading off with Rockzilla and Salamence. I decided to lead off with Bisharp and Cresselia. That Intimidate is obvious from a mile away, and it's a free Defiant boost for me. This works out nice. I predict him to go Crunch on that spot as I go into Landorus for another Intimidate, and he is going to go ahead and Mega Evolve. You know, we've been doing this pretty much the same time with the Flamethrower shenanigans. He gets for the neutral play, which is the Super Power, and that is a great play on my opponent's part to knock out my Bisharp before I get any Defiant shenanigans. Flamethrower does an okay chunk of damage as he withdraws Rockzilla back into Thundurus. I know that he is attempting to do the Hidden Power Ice shenanigans. It doesn't really matter. Rock Slide does really nicely to Thundurus as I burn him. And that combined with Sandstorm is going to bring this guy down really well. But that Dragon Pulse did an absolute ton of damage to Landorus. So now I withdraw it so I can use it later for Intimidates as I go back into Crest. As the Excadrill protects and a Dragon Pulse is cast onto Cresselia. It's a crit, so it does do a lot more than it normally would. Sandstorm is raging, and taking away HP steadily as I go for a Helping Hand boosted Volt Switch, I do believe, to hit the Salamence, I'm not mistaken. No, I went for a Hydro Pump and I missed. That is so unfortunate. God, that would have been so nice to knock out that Excadrill right there with that Helping Hand boosted Hydro Pump. Helping Hand still triggers even if your ally dies, so that's kind of cool. I protect the Landorus so I can live the Rock Slide. Rotom flinches from the Rock Slide, which is very unfortunate. That means Landorus goes down and there's a Rotom. My Rotom gets its Berry, and the Rock Slide, I swear, Excadrill is just so powerful, but I do knock it out here with, oh, well, it's Focus Sash, never mind. So it's not even Choice Scarf. Dragon Pulse comes down, gets another quit on the Rotom, and that is the game. Yes, I did say that very much like the Looney Tunes from the Toon Squad. I did not do that on purpose. Thank you, Roku, for the games. I enjoyed them. Thank you guys. You guys deserve it for all the support and love. I'll catch you guys in the next set of videos. I got a ton of recordings, so I got to get to it. Power on, power off.